Get started, but I don't see anyone.
Okay, good afternoon. Salam now. Welcome at our online showcase about the Awash basin in Ethiopia. My name is Gerien van Genderen. I work as a project lead at Woord en Daad, an NGO based in the Netherlands, in the Sustainable Water team. I present together with Joy Pengel, who works at the Dutch Water Authorities and has stayed in Ethiopia in the last year as a young expert. Woord en Daad and Dutch Water Authorities, both based in the Netherlands, work together with other partners to support the Ethiopian government in improving the water governance. In this talk, we'll give you an introduction on the Awash River and insights in the challenges. We want to elaborate on the water agreement that was signed almost 2 years ago. We'll give a couple of examples of ongoing collaboration projects and finalize with conclusions and our thoughts on the way forward. If you have questions, please write them in the chat. We will either address them in the chat or try to answer at the end of the session. The Awash basin in Ethiopia is the 4th largest catchment. It is a very important lifeline for an area that's almost 3 times the Netherlands. 21 million people live in the area. The river is 1,200 kilometers long. It starts here in Oromia, left of Addis Ababa. South of Addis is the important Koka Dam. The river enters Afar and ends in a salt lake. Amhara, Somali, and a small part of SNNP are also part of the catchment area. There are also 2 administrative councils, Addis Ababa and Dire Dawa. The Awash River basin is highly industrialized, upstream, here around Addis Ababa, but also very important to big state farms and many smallholder farmers more downstream. The pressure on the water system is rapidly increasing and will only increase further because predictions show that it is likely temperatures will rise and precipitation will drop due to climate change. The many industries upstream lead to problems with water quality. Downstream are severe problems with drought and flooding. The water resources are poorly regulated. The price for water is highly unequal. Households pay 8,700 times more than industrial water users per equal volume. As a result, water is inefficiently used. It's wasted. Finally, sedimentation leads to lower capacity in Lake Koka, for example, causing even less fresh water available. So it is clear now there are many challenges, and upstream and downstream problems and solutions often relate to each other. Upstream pollution or waste gives downstream problems. Too much use upstream gives scarcity downstream. To make the situation even more complicated, in Ethiopia, the regional states are highly autonomous. Of course, the states have opposing interests, therefore cooperation is needed. This is a challenge, especially in Ethiopia. This is also a cultural issue. Everybody wants to solve problems on their own. The autonomous states consider cooperation as giving their mandate to others. The stakeholders are the federal government, the Ministry of Water and Energy, the Awash Basin Development Office, which is a watershed at the federal level. And then, of course, there are the autonomous states, of which Oromia and Afar are the most involved ones, and the city-state Addis Ababa. Cooperation is key for dealing with the challenges of the Awash catchment area. A flexible water cooperative agreement with evaluation and improvement loops is needed. There is a need to be informed on relevant issues. There is a need for a structured approach. There is a need for stakeholder involvement. There is a need for shared data. 2 years ago, a water agreement was signed between these stakeholders, which was carefully prepared in the years before. This is unique in Ethiopia. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first cooperative framework that was signed between multiple states. We made a short movie of the purpose of the water agreement, which we shall show now.
Upstream, but the water user's growth, the water's value becomes bigger. Water means no harvest, poverty, and hopelessness for millions. The water system in the Awash basin, consisting of a main river with many tributaries, lakes, and reservoirs, is influenced by many factors. The growing number of water users creates scarcity and erosion, and deforestation, flooding, and drought also threaten the ecosystem. Awash basin, the many administrative boundaries and numerous governmental institutions make the water management fragmented. This fragmentation hinders an effective approach to overcome the upstream and downstream conflicting interests. Problems in water use upstream of the situation downstream. Solving downstream problems often requires upstream interventions. So, we have one river and many water users. The growing industry upstream use much water to discharge many unfiltered, polluted water back into the river. This causes intense pollution. The farmers, they need water for their crops. The large plantations, in particular, use enormous amounts of water for their land. This creates scarcity for the farmers. People downstream, they want clean water for their daily use, but have seen the water flowing their way dwindle in recent years. It is word and deeds mission to give these people a voice, and the Ethiopian governments, consisting of autonomous regional governments downstream and upstream, and the federal government in Addis Ababa, which plays a regulatory role. All these parties need good cooperation to implement water management according to this catchment approach. The big question: how can Ethiopian governments jointly strengthen the cooperation and find answers to the challenges everyone is facing? The Dutch water authorities and, more than that, have worked on good water governance in Ethiopia for over 10 years. Through the Blue Deal and the FDW, these parties have supported the Ethiopian governments in drawing this agreement. A coordinated and formalized approach to solve the problems surrounding the Awash are being worked on for and by all parties upstream and downstream. This requires a mindset that goes beyond institutional and organizational interests and thinks and acts from the added value of all parties together. Responsibilities are taken up together to arrive at a joint solution. So now we are it's not in 2021, the Ethiopian governments signed the water agreement. The governance structure has been further established during a work visit to the Netherlands. Now we go for implementation.
We have to share the water fairly, and we have to work on how we are going to share the water fairly, and we have to work on to remove the pollutants or to protect the river from pollution. So this couldn't be alone. We can't work with a single region. Couldn't be responsible, or we can't work alone. So we need the cooperation from the provinces or the regions that are sharing the water, and from the federal government.
So how can Ethiopian governments jointly find a solution for the enormous problems around the Awash River? The answer is together. Together stronger. Stronger together.
So the water agreement is an instrument to promote collaboration. The first and probably most important thing is to bring the stakeholders together. From the start, some stakeholders didn't even know each other. Water challenges quickly ended up into conflicts. Now they meet together and start talking about the issues, which is a big step. Of course, the goal is to harmonize policy and planning, although this will take time. It's already good to have a platform to discuss urgent issues at the political level. Agreements have to be made about communication strategies and escalation instruments. Discussions on common priorities have led to 3 topics, namely water allocation, water quality, and flood management. Next to these topics, there are many issues to be solved. There is a need for a strong institutional setup, more capacity in the government institutions, enabling environment, policy, legislation, regulation, and a clear roadmap and strategy to improve issues. One of the first issues that were addressed within the water agreement was the setup of a governance structure. During the exchange visit in the Netherlands, the Ethiopian stakeholders installed a steering committee, a technical committee, and a secretariat, which is formed by the Awash Basin Development Office. In the steering committee, representatives of the collaborating stakeholders take place, who are mandated with executing power. In the meantime, several steering committee meetings have been held. It's not easy. The prioritized issues are clear. There are enough agenda items, but there is no regular schedule of meetings. There is a lack of transparency, there is hesitation to cooperate. Also, there is tension between the stakeholders due to insecurities in the country. There is a lot of work to be done on the chemistry, getting to know each other better. Exposure visits can create time to think and discuss out of the normal busy life. The statement "stronger together" still has to be proven right. It's encouraging, though, that at the expert level, collaboration is improving. We will show you 2 examples of this. The first example is on water quality, the joint industrial wastewater monitoring platform. This is a collaboration between the Awash Basin Administration Office, the Ministry of Water and Energy, the Environmental Protection Authority, the Oromia Water and Energy Bureau, and the Amhara Water and Energy Bureau, and the joint monitoring program of the WHO and UNICEF. Together, 3 industrial sectors have been prioritized, which are tanneries, breweries, and textile factories. 3 teams were formed with representation of all organizations. Together, sample rounds are being organized, including trainings together. A monitoring strategy and a monitoring plan were developed. Separately, all partners have little resources, and there was no data sharing in the past. Now, the resources are being put together, and the conclusion is it is more efficient and it is cheaper. This is recognized by all partners themselves, which can stimulate even more collaboration, stronger together in practice. There is still some improvement possible on feedbacking to the industries, using the data to lower the pollution and improve the water quality. The second showcase we want to share with you is on water allocation planning, which will be presented by Joy Pengel. Joy, I give the floor to you now.
Thank you, Gerdien. Thank you for giving a short introduction and also showing the first of the projects. Let me introduce myself first quickly. My name is Joy Pengel, and I work as a young expert for the Awash Blue Deal program for the Water Board Authority, Zuider-Zeeland in the Netherlands. And I work on various projects underneath this Blue Deal program. One of these projects is the water allocation planning process. Within this project, we help our various partners on how to allocate water in the Awash River Basin in a proper manner. This is done through 5 steps mainly, as you can see in the illustration here. The first step is on implementation phase, and in that one, we actually start with making a team and eventually creating the first analysis that need to be done as well as creating the roadmap to the next steps. In step 2, the data is collected and also verified and analyzed for a part of it to see kind of what is needed and what are the demand options at that time, that year. And in phase 3, the final plan is created after looking at the 3 different scenarios and it's presented to the General Assembly. In the General Assembly, you have like all different stakeholders involved. So from the local farmers up to the bigger organizations, to make sure that they all know what the final plan is in relation to the water that they can get in use. In step 4, the plan is actually implemented and then operation is started. And at the same time, actually, step 5 is already starting, in which the monitoring, evaluation, and the compliance is conducted. Because, of course, when you're implementing, you need to start gathering the data to make sure that the steps are done properly and that you actually get out what you need. So we kind of created this visualization because it was easier this way to have these discussions with our partners than having a book with just text in it. Next slide. It just made it much smoother, and it also ensured that when we had this kind of discussions, as you can see here, that people were much more involved and they were more willing to give their own opinions and focus on what was actually being said. Here you can see Getachew, who is the Ethiopian project leader. He's using PowerPoint presentation at the same time next to it, the visualization, to discuss what last year, how the whole cycle went, and to see kind of what were the positive outcomes, what were things that needed to be done better, how do we want to continue using this whole process with all our partners. So you can really see like he really tried to make sure that it became interactive in 2 ways. So you have a presentation with all the information, but at the same time you have the visualization next to it all the time. Next slide. And during that presentation, there were times where people could put in post-its on the visualization to show where their means of discussion points were, where they thought things went well, what they thought are important aspects of the whole cycle. It is important to note that this was the first time that they actually have done a water allocation planning process implementation. So for everyone, it was quite new. And because it was quite new, we decided to first focus on a small area of the Awash River Basin instead of the whole Awash, which is quite big. So not everyone who was there had directly a stake in what was being done, because, for instance, it was not in their region. However, for everyone, it was still a very interesting, valuable experience because it showed they could still reflect on what might be their issues in their area and also keep on learning on how they could do it better on a larger scale in the future. It's just created a more of an understanding with each other. And if something wasn't clear, we could directly discuss it with each other on the table and where we were. Next slide. So yeah, the discussions were always kind of like towards the people ourselves and our partners. However, we also had a lot of discussions that we wanted and questions from the people itself, because eventually the people who are using it are everyone. So it's not only the government and stuff who are implementing it, but actually the communities and the organizations. And to showcase more on what's being done, we had the chance of having our water allocation planning cycle in the exhibition, which is now being held at the Science Museum. And in this part, the people can come. There's always someone of us there who discusses with them and answers their questions and really showcase what we are being doing and how we can make sure that they actually get the water that they need. So this way, we are not only working on making the collaboration within our partners better, but also trying to see how we can collaborate also with the people and make sure that they have a better feeling about what the government is doing and that it is really for them. At the same time, this is of course very basic, and this is with us talking and discussing, which is very good and very important. But at the same time, we're also thinking about, okay, all these things that went wrong, how can we make sure that next year it doesn't happen the same time? So we're making like a clickable PDF, and inside the clickable PDF, we have way more information on the aspects that didn't go as well as we hoped. For instance, on who is responsible for what, to make sure that not same steps are being done twice by two people or not at all. And also on budgeting and communication, because we noticed that for a lot of steps, the first round, they didn't put in any budget or too little. So we need to figure out how we can make sure that there's enough budget available for them to actually implement the whole process, because otherwise you have a beautiful process, but you cannot implement it. So that's something we're working on to ensure that this year it will go much better and that actually everyone can do what they need to be doing. And budget is not only on money, it's also on resources of people who are going to do the work. Next slide. So next to a clickable PDF, we are also trying to make like a visualization in like a video. This way we can have the chance to showing this when we have different discussions with different partners and stakeholders on the whole process. And we're all going to be on the same page, because often you have new people coming and then it takes quite some time to get them to introduce to the whole system and what we have been doing before. And this way we can make it go much faster and quicker and make sure that they are all on the same page as us. Important here is also that they want to use this as a way to have very specific focused discussions on very important topics regarding to the water allocation. So for instance, inclusiveness, transparency, shared vision, and awareness. These ones are the first four on which we're going to work to make sure that they are highlighted in the whole process, so that when we have a discussion with certain actors, they can actually directly tell us, this is something we understand or not, or we have another idea about inclusiveness or not. So that in the beginning, everyone is on the same page and we don't have to have the discussion of what it actually means when we talk about transparency or actually the whole water allocation planning. That's what we hope for, at least. Next slide. Yeah, so to conclude, there are many challenges within the Awash River Basin, which led to the need for cooperation, and also which led to the creation of the water agreement. At expert level, of course, it seems to be going quite well. Most of the experts are very happy with the system that we put in place. They're very happy with how the whole process helps them to do their daily jobs and to create more collaboration so that they get to know the other partners who are out there. At political level, it is improving, but there are still a lot of steps needed. This mainly because of the way that it is now structured. It's relatively a new structure that has been implemented. So everyone has to kind of find out what exactly their role is within the whole process. At the same time, they are so busy with other things that having specific meetings on these topics is kind of a challenge. But it's it's becoming more and more routine for them. And of course, the importance of collaboration needs to be shown, and that's something we're working on Air Daily to ensure that they are more enthusiastic. Our mission is to give people, like at the grassroots level, more of a voice, and that's what we're doing also with these small initiatives, for instance, at the Science Museum, to give them a chance to have a discussion with us. And of course, the most important thing is that we're stronger together, and together we're stronger. And this is something we're constantly trying to tell them to make sure that it really embeds into the Ethiopian culture as well, and that they start using collaboration, not only with our project, but also hopefully in others in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, let us know, Gerdine and me, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Joy, for this very interesting presentation on the water allocation process. Yeah, there is time for questions. We haven't got any in the chat, but please feel free to ask some questions. In the meantime, I have a question for Joy. Joy, is this water allocation process, is this a yearly process, or is this only taking place in case that there is severe drought, that there is not enough water, and it should be divided carefully, or how does this work?
Yeah, the water allocation process is a yearly process. So every year they go and look at the estimated and predicted water that will be available for that year. And then they check and see how they can distribute that water equally for everyone. And then the next year they use the data and the outcome of the year before, as well as predicted data, to make analysis for the upcoming year. So it's a yearly cycle that continues, and hopefully it would get easier and easier every year, of course. But yeah, it's something that's completely every year has to be redone.
Okay, I have a question in the chat. In the beginning, we mentioned the huge disparity in water pricing, and the title of the session mentioned pricing and value of water. It's a good question, thank you for that. How were these things addressed during the allocation process? Well, in the whole water pricing program, of which we only touched a small part of, actually, because of the time, there is also a very important place for registration of water users, giving them permits to use the water, and finally, value this water. So let people pay for the water they use. And this is already starting to take place, but still the price of the water is low. The Ethiopian government is working on giving a fair price to the water. So yes, this is a good point, which is of course needed to give people some motivation to be to use the water in a good way, in an efficient way. And also it gives the government more money to do some work on the basin.
At the same time, I would like to add, for the specifically water allocation aspect, you have also the water, like the way of how you distribute the water if there's a scarcity, a priority ladder, which is part of the Ethiopian mandate to analyze the water. However, this is not yet completely finalized, so we're working on trying to help the government create this prioritization so that if there's a scarcity, for instance, they have a way of how to analyze the socioeconomic benefits of every aspect so that it becomes better. So that has sort of to do with the pricing in the sense, but then more with the socioeconomic aspects, not necessarily directly money related.
Yeah, thank you for this addition, Joy. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, we will conclude this session in time by thanking you again for being here. And thank you to our donors. Have a nice day.
Have a nice